You're listening to episode number 38 of the Indie Film Tribe podcast with me, your host, Angela Matamocha. Welcome. Hi there, good people. Hi. Angela Matamocha here of Indie Film Tribe. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today, gosh, I am super duper excited to introduce you to this organization and this woman. Ladies and gentlemen, the founder of Moms in Film, Mathilde Dratwa. Welcome, Mathilde.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I'm very excited to be chatting with you.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to have you. Really quick, before we continue, for those of you listening, I am going to read the mission of Moms in Film straight from their website. So here it is, Moms in Film. I just think this is so awesome, which is why I have to read this. Okay, Moms in Film. Our mission: we energize the careers of mothers in film and television by providing community, funding, and advocacy. We stand up for gender equality and fight for a more diverse industry. We show up for each other. Invite us to your screenings. I think that's so awesome. We hire each other. Use us to find your cast and crew. We say please and thank you because we're moms. We think dads are great. We welcome parents and careers of all ages. We welcome parents and carers of all ages and gender identities. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Moms in Film. Welcome, Mathilde. This is so awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, we're really thrilled to be getting the word out about what we do. And that last part about what you read, I think, just to go into a little bit deeper, we really believe that there's a link between gender inequality in film and television and parenthood. Having said that, we are an organization for dads, for moms, for people who are caring for an elderly relative. We're for anyone who's really juggling caring responsibilities with filmmaking. But we do believe that a part of that will help make the industry more diverse and more equal and inclusive of women in particular, which is obviously a problem that the industry has. So we're juggling both of those things. At the same time, we're sort of about moms because we care about women in film, and at the same time, we're very welcoming and open to our allies and our members who identify as men or trans parents, etc.
I love what you said there about sort of all caretakers and how you included the elderly as well, because a lot of times when, parents do age, the sister in the family, the mom in the family is usually the one, for the most part, that ends up taking care of the elderly as well. So that is incredible. Let me ask you this. What is it that you just love about your organization? I mean, I obviously think this is amazing the first time I heard about it, but how did you even start this, and what do you love about Moms in Film?
I love that it's a passion project and that it was born really out of necessity. I'm not someone who ever thought I would be at the helm of a nonprofit. It was not in my career plan. I wanted to make films, and in many ways, I'm now a mom and I'm a filmmaker. Why would I want to add to my plate when it's already so hard? But the truth is, when I had my own son, I realized that I was not prepared to deal with the demands of the industry, and I hadn't thought about it as deeply as perhaps I should have, or I hadn't really reached out to as many parents working in film as I should have. But I became overwhelmed by the long hours and the changing locations and the irregular hours and the fact that it's a gig-to-gig freelance economy. All of these things, which come into stark relief when you're pitting that against childcare, finding adequate, quality, affordable childcare. No daycare is going to watch your child for the same amount of hours as you need to work on a film. So even if you have your kid in daycare, you need to find someone to drop him off, to pick him up. And then sometimes you're not working and you're still paying for daycare because you can't lose the spot. but you're not working. So what do you do? So it's really tough to figure out how to make it work, considering all of these things that make film so unique. You know, film and television are unique because of those characteristics, the freelance economy, the long hours, etc. So I started Moms in Film really by accident. I wrote an article about how tricky I thought it all was, and people really responded very positively. And from that response, we decided to start meeting in New York. And then Christy reached out almost immediately from LA and said, I want to be involved in this. I just had a daughter. How can I be involved? So we're now bi-coastal. And then briefly after that, we got the first grant we ever applied for from South by Southwest. And with that grant, the grant was really about sort of developing the concept for mobile childcare to be used on set and at film festivals. And because we are who we are and we're moms and we get shit done, sorry to swear.
Yeah, you're fine.
We decided, hey, why not just launch the pilot of this? And we rented a mobile unit and we provided free childcare at South by Southwest to all the filmmakers who are presenting at the festival. Which was really, really phenomenal. We were able to do it because our childcare partners are so fantastic. Collab and Play in Los Angeles. They're actually a brick and mortar co-working space with on-site childcare. So they already cater to that freelance parent who needs a place to work, but also has to juggle the demands of childcare, changing hours, etc. So they came from LA to provide the childcare in this unit on wheels, this Wee Wagon. The Wee Wagon project is what we called it. And they came and provided childcare there, and it was free to all the filmmakers attending at the festival. And the idea is really to show the industry, hey, it's possible. You can have quality childcare in a unit on wheels, which means you can have on-site childcare. And so that was sort of a big, big stride forward for our organization. And suddenly we were we started with just a few meetings, and then now we're inviting guest speakers. The caliber of the speakers is very, very high. We're doing panels and partnering with parents working in film and television, both above and below the line, because the issues are different for different fields, right? If you're a director, if you're an A-list actor, it's going to be a different thing from if you're a makeup artist, who has to be there the whole time also, but can't start making demands about childcare or whatnot.
That's incredible. I didn't even think about makeup artists, first ACs, like everybody. Everybody. Oh my gosh. Let me ask you this. So if I'm, let's say, an independent filmmaker, right, and I know I'm going to be shooting for 3 weeks this project, and some of my crew, some of my cast do have children, how do I coordinate with you? How do I bring you guys on? What does that look like?
It's still very much in the early stages. What we're trying to do is get productions to actually make childcare a line item in their budget. So we're trying to speak first to sort of bigger productions and say, hey, look, add this as a line item. We actually have a whole campaign called Budget the Baby, which is asking them to think about childcare as something that they should be prioritizing, because the number one asset in any film, in any creative project, is the people. What's going to make your film or not make your film isn't necessarily the special effects, it's the people that you have. And that's why productions are willing to go a great lengths to make their stars happy, right? They'll pay for private jets, they'll pay for all kinds of big things because they know that those people are important to the project. We claim that if people are the biggest asset in film, then the best way that you can make sure that you're not cutting out off the bat a whole bunch of talent that you don't even know exists is to make it an inclusive workforce. And by providing childcare, you're opening the door to all this talent that you might not otherwise have accessible to you.
So true. So true.
You can, and talent, I mean that very, very broadly, whether that's actual actor or whether it's art design, production designer, art director, whether it's a director of photography, whether, whoever you're dealing with, you want to get the best people. And you may not even know who the best people are because they might not be willing to work a job that requires X amount of hours or changing locations or whatnot. But if you open that door and you make it possible for them to work, suddenly you're including a whole new pool of people of, potentially very high caliber that you are not even aware might be available to you.
So just so I'm clear, so as far as your outreach right now, you're starting out big. You're going for the big studios that could afford to put your company as a line item, as part of their budget, to know, like, yes, we need to get moms in film on our set. This is part of our budget. And to me, it sounds like that could be a great thing to leverage when you are looking for talent, when you are looking for crew, to be able to say, as a production company, we have on-set childcare.
Absolutely. And when we have had speakers come both to New York and to LA, we've had guest speakers who work in all kinds of crew positions, above the line, below the line, etc. And those that have been lucky enough to work on not even sets that provided childcare, but child-friendly sets, they've said that it made all the difference. And those are people they want to work with again. Those are relationships that they're really prioritizing. So you see that just by allowing them to take their kids to set, you're opening this door. Because moms want their children to potentially be able to see what they do all day when they're not home. We've spoken to mothers who say, I leave before my child's awake and I come home after my child's asleep. My child thinks I'm away. They don't know that I'm here during the week when I'm working. It's heartbreaking. And if you're able to show your kid, oh, look, this is what I do. Look at this cool machine that does this. And, this is what a grip does. And this is what an electric does. That's really exciting for the kids to know what it is that their parents are working on.
And it just really speaks to taking care of your people. Like you said at the very beginning, like what makes a production great or possible is the people that are involved. So if you do have a child, right away you're mentally taking care of them because they're not worried about that child. They're not feeling guilty about being gone all day. All these things that you just mentioned, that is really taking care of someone.
I think that what's really tough in the industry is that women are aware that they're already at a disadvantage. And so they're nervous that by making this kind of demand, they are highlighting the fact that they don't want to be perceived as needier, or they don't want to put any obstacles to them getting hired. So there's sort of two streams of thought around the issue. One is, I'm not going to talk about being a parent. I'm not going to have pictures of my kid anywhere near me in any kind of professional setting. I'm not going to mention that I'm a mom. It's not a part of my life, professionally. And I understand that because you need to get work and you need to get hired. But then the other thing is, we need to make this a part of the conversation. And sort of the more grassroots activist-y speakers that we've had have said, no, I bring pictures of my kids. I bring my kids to set. I make it, not only is it important for everyone around here to understand that this is a part of my life, they also need to understand it doesn't make me any less good at what I do. It doesn't make me less reliable. I know how to juggle it. If I choose to bring my kids to set one day, I know exactly how that's going to work. It's not going to get in anyone's way. I'm not less professional because of it. And we need everyone to see that. And we need women coming up behind me to see that it's possible. Yes. Because, for me, I had one role model, one filmmaker I knew who was posting pictures of herself with her child in professional settings at film festivals, etc. Marielle Heller, who received our award the first year. We award a filmmaker each year, and she's sort of been vocal about the need to include that as part of the conversation. But it's really difficult, and I understand why some people don't want to do it, really, with no judgment. I understand that that's a difficult thing to do. It's not something everyone wants to do. But I think that it's important to tell the powers that be, look, it's not, you might think that this is a liability. Let me show you that it's not. Let me show you how good I am at my job. And by the way, I'm juggling this with parenthood. But it's so hard because dads don't get the same, don't get the same treatment. A dad can be a dad and no one thinks, oh, that's going to get in the way of his work, you know?
Right.
And in fact, if a dad does one little thing for their child, generally...
Woo! Yeah.
So there is sort of a wider societal, and this has nothing to do with film, it's just a wider societal thing that happens, which is tricky. But I think that that's part of what's really exciting, is that there's this shift in feminism right now, which is moving to being more inclusive of women of different races. You know, there's been a lot of criticism of certain feminists who don't take into consideration the fact that there is oppression, you know, there's racism, there's ageism, there's all these different factors that can intersect, right? And being a parent is one of those factors. And I think what's exciting now with sort of younger, newer feminists is that we're seeing all these factors taken into consideration. So if you were a Black female filmmaker, some things are going to be the same and some are going to be different to the struggles that I face, right?
Right.
If you're a member of the LGBT community, if you're a member, and so what we're seeing is sort of a more inclusive conversation around feminism. And luckily, that's starting to include parenthood. And people are starting to say, hey, I'm a mom. Let's talk about that. You know, let's talk about the ways in which different kinds of things that are making it difficult for me to succeed in my career because of that, in addition to other factors.
It sounds like to me also, you know, because this is, you know, so new, there's an educational component, there's a learning curve. And I feel as more people see this on set, right, and see that, you know, it's not going to get in the way production, the more other productions will be open to it. I think it's just one of these things that just has to be tried. People have to see it, get it. Okay, yes, let us make that a line item in our budget.
Right. Right.
Wow. So now let me ask you this, because you are a filmmaker as well. This is why you started this whole company, right? Because you were finding obstacles and difficulties. Do you mind me asking you a little bit about what you're working on right now, or what you're excited about right now outside of Moms in Film or within?
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting, actually. I have a short in post-production right now that is about motherhood. And I'm writing a play as well, which is interesting. It's just what the material lends itself to. And it's all about being a new mother under Trump. A woman goes into labor and gives birth on election night 2016.
Oh my gosh.
She doesn't know what happened because her birth is complicated and all kinds of stuff. And so she's sort of shielded from it for a couple of days and she doesn't know the result. So that's sort of
what a great setup. Wow.
But it's really interesting that you ask, because one of the reasons that I think it's really important to make sure that mothers are telling stories is that I've been very disappointed recently in some of the representations of mothers that I've seen on screen. Particularly, unfortunately, and that's not always the case, but particularly in films that were written by men or directed by men. And that's not always true. There are men who write women and write moms beautifully and direct women beautifully in those roles. But there is this general sense that the representation of mothers is not great. So let me ask you, how many films have you seen that include a woman pumping?
I can't think anything off the top of my head, but what I want to say, if I ever did see it, I think it was a comedic element, right? It was something to be laughed about or like joked about, like, oh, cover that up. It was not taken seriously.
But you hardly never, ever, ever, I've never spoken to someone who could name one off the top of of their head. But if I ask them, name a film in which you've seen a woman topless, they can name 5. You know, they can name 10, they can name 20. And I just think, wow, if we're okay seeing boobs, why are we not seeing women nursing and pumping? Why are women objectified in one way and yet their real experiences are not depicted? I had trouble breastfeeding. It was very challenging for me. Pumping was a big emotional issue. And I didn't know that that could be a thing because I didn't see it on screen. Wow. I had no idea. And there's a whole organization, the Gina Davis Institute on Media, really talks about why representation is important and how it affects real life. So, for example, when women started getting cast as forensic scientists on TV, forensic science programs saw a spike in female applicants. So we know that representation matters. And I can tell you firsthand, if I had seen more women struggling with that kind of issue. I'll tell you where I did see a woman pump was on an episode of Girls and on an episode of Catastrophe. So in some ways...
That's right. Lena did. Yes. That was a great episode. She was really struggling, and Marnie, came in and saved the day. Yes.
But I was already a mom at that point, and if I had seen that before becoming a mom, it would have been so great for me. And it's interesting that it seems to be happening in TV first, and film is sort of lagging behind in that regard. And so one of our campaigns is called Make Them Moms, and it urges filmmakers to make characters in their films moms, even though the film may not be about motherhood, even though the character can have a career, that's another question I like to ask. How many films can you think of that has a lead character who is a mom and who works, and where the film is not about parenthood?
I'm trying to think. Wow.
Usually people might sometimes come up with one, and they say Erin Brockovich. And I say, well, great. But do you know when Erin Brockovich came out? A long time ago, and B, she was based on a real life person who happened to be a true story. But how many fictional characters, how many screenwriters are thinking, oh, you know what, and I'll make this character a mom, even though it's about her being a lawyer, even though it's about her being a doctor, even though it's about her being a teacher, whatever it is. You don't even need to make it a prominent part of the film, but I think it's important to see mothers, especially mothers who work. Because when we talk about representations, it's important for young girls and young boys to be seeing motherhood as a full spectrum, and not just the sort of kind of stereotypical either complete mess or, A-type mom that we see on TV. That there's more than just those two things. They have lives outside of those two things. They're not only going to PTA meetings. They're not just doing bake sales. It's important to show the full life experience of a mom and the full, I want to see mothers struggle with intimacy with their partner after having a baby. I want to see mothers, I want to see mothers struggle with balancing their ambition with having a baby and juggling that. I want to see all of those things. I don't just want to see mothers, driving a van to the soccer practice,
Gosh, I think we really underestimate the power of representation. I didn't even think about it until you said it, but it is so true. When I think back, and I did this, I was like a roller disco queen for years as a little girl, and probably one of the reasons I got into acting, because I saw Tootie, and she looked like me, I'm like, oh, there's someone on television that looks like me. Maybe I can do that too. We really underestimate the power of representation. It's incredible. And I'd even think about, like what you said, before you had a baby, not knowing about pumping, because we don't see it. What we see are just naked boobs. We don't see a boob being pumped. But I think it's too much for men, to see that. I don't think they want to see that. I think they want to see boobs just as a sexy image, not as what they're actually for.
Right, but those men might one day end up married to a woman, decide to have a kid, or not married, whatever,
Right, yeah.
17, I don't care if you get married or not, but they might end up with a partner who has a child who is dealing with those things. And it's hard for them too, not having been exposed to it at all.
They haven't been exposed.
And my husband wasn't equipped either. I wasn't equipped to deal with the sort of emotional trauma that whole breastfeeding thing put me through. But my husband didn't know either. And if we had both sort of known that was a possibility and a thing, and we'd seen people deal with it, I think the other thing that's frustrating for me is that there's this idea that sort of domestic sphere is sort of less dramatic or less funny or less tragic or less...
There's a lot of drama in that.
So much drama, and there's so much comedy. There's both. It's really, really rich, actually. Yeah. And they're starting, again, it's mostly television, but that kind of area, when you look at Catastrophe, when you look at Better Things, when you look at the sort of newer shows that are coming, particularly streaming shows, on Hulu, on Amazon, on Netflix, you're starting to see that shift, which is really exciting. But I think that film really needs to catch up and fast.
I agree. I agree with you 110%. And I just go back and think of all the different sets that I've been on. And when the only time I've actually seen children on set is when they're actors.
Yep, absolutely.
That's it.
And I think, again, there's an above the line, below the line thing. It's easy for someone with an important position to decide to bring their child to set, but it requires, the producers, the directors. It really requires leadership to make that okay for people below the line to know that they can do as well. And so I think there just needs to be a little bit of a paradigm shift around the way that we talk about parenthood, the way that we talk about people's lives outside of filmmaking. This is another thing that I'm very passionate about. The demand that film makes is difficult on families even without children. I know a lot of couples, the divorce rate is very, very high.
Yep.
A lot of couples struggle to stay together throughout this, one party being part of the industry and the other not, because how do you make that work? When a person's just away always, it's very, very challenging. So I think being able to address the fact that hours need to be shorter for everyone's sanity, not just for parents. It's, I care because of parenthood, but it's not safe for people to be driving after working that length of time. We know that it's not safe. We've seen the accidents that have happened. And it's really, your personal, private lives are not valued and important regardless of whether you have kids or not. And that's why I brought up aging parents before. That's why, I bring up the fullness of a person's experience and well-being, because we all have responsibilities outside of filmmaking. Not many of us can afford to give up our lives in the way that film demands us to do. And if we reduce those hours, we'll again see people be able to participate in the workforce who were probably opting out at some point just to be able to live a life that they wanted to live. No other industry is fighting for 12-hour days. That's crazy. No other industry is. If you told people, those big union factory jobs, etc., if you told them that they had to work 15 hours, 18 hours, there would be a strike tomorrow.
Absolutely.
So why are we accepting of it? Yes, we're lucky. We're working in a field that we're passionate about. Yes, we're doing this thing that we all love. That's great to work in a field that you love. It doesn't mean it has to be the only thing, and it doesn't mean you won't be as good if you also have other things going on. In fact, I argue that parenthood has made me a better filmmaker.
Yeah. I think just the more complete maybe complete's not the correct word, but the more experience you have as a human being as a whole, the more you can bring to the project, whether it's travel, whether it's parenting, whether it's it just makes, the more you have experienced, the more you have seen, the more you have done, you can add all of that to your filmmaking, and it does make, I find, for a much richer artist, quite frankly.
Right. And it's interesting, when you compare it to other countries. I'm from Belgium, so my experience, I can tell you, I went home back to Belgium to give birth. I was able to stay longer in hospital if I wanted to. It was completely free. Everything was completely free. I saw the difference when I saw the way that people give birth in America and the way that people give birth in other countries. I really saw that disparity in treatment and experience, and in cost. And, other countries have, the United States is one of the only countries that does not give mandatory paid maternity leave or mandatory maternity leave at all. Other countries are not only giving everyone maternity leave, but they have to pay for it, right? So, and paternity leave, because this is another issue. It's a feminist issue. If fathers are not given time, then that assumes that it's the mother who's going to stay home and watch the kid. And again, that affects their life. So you look at the Scandinavian countries, which are sort of the more socially progressive, mothers and fathers both get a really long amount of time that they can both take fully paid. So one parent might take a chunk, the other parent might take a chunk, one parent might choose not to, and it's very, very equal.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's really great. And it's one of the things that's interesting. We have a sister company in the UK, and they're called Raising Films, and they deal with a lot of similar issues to us, but there are some differences because they do live in a system where even freelancers get some sort of paid maternity leave. Even if you're working freelance, you get something back, which is unheard of here. Even if you're not working freelance, you might not get maternity leave here, and definitely not paid necessarily. So, I think that our labor laws need to change to be more, to be fair towards women, to be fair towards parents, to create the kind of workforce that we want to have and to enjoy and to participate in.
Yeah, to be more family friendly. I mean, I think that's it's a root of so many issues that we are currently having in this country. We don't value family like we quote unquote say we do, and we don't value our child's minds, which is why there's never any money going into education. There's no money in education. It's very odd. It doesn't make any sense,
We also don't value carers, the people that are caring for our children.
Our teachers, they're the most underpaid profession on the, it doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense. And there's a childcare crisis right now where there's not enough affordable options available to families. And at the same time, the people providing that service aren't making enough money. So there's a crisis on both sides. And I think that it needs to be addressed because I think that it's a deliberate attempt to keep women working at lower wages. It's a deliberate attempt to make sure that they are not rising to positions of power as quickly as men. I don't believe that it's accidental. I believe that it's really, it should. Every other country has done it. The United States is one of two. So come on, we need to get with the program. Give people maternity leave, pay them while they're on maternity leave. They're populating your country,
Oh my gosh. You are, yeah. This is also just bringing me back to this idea that I'm just learning about. It's a founder of a business, and she is a mom, and one of the things that she's saying, this issue in childcare, she's trying to, solve this issue by creating sort of entrepreneurs, mothers that want to become entrepreneurs, where they can sort of open up their own childcare, and they sort of walk mothers and teachers through the process of opening it up. So then when they do have to come back to work, they don't actually have to leave the house. They could have, a couple more kids and be like, signed off properly by the government, and the whole paperwork process walk through. It's a very interesting concept that I just thought, like, wow, it feels like if we take these sort of matters into our own hands, kind of like what you have done with Moms in Film, we have to, because nobody else is going to do it for us.
We have to, and we need to get dads to stand with us. We need to get mothers without children to stand with us. We need to get men without children to stand with us. We need to make it a more inclusive conversation, and we need to make sure that everybody understands why this is important, because I think sometimes there's this little bit of this attitude of, but I don't, a woman might say, but I don't have children, I'm willing to work 15-hour days, like, why should this impact me? And I think it's important to really take a second to explain why this is a feminist issue, why you should care if you're a feminist even if you don't have children, why men should be feminists. I think it's the moment in time when we need to be very clear about what our values are. So yeah, and on that note, I hear my son and making noises over there, and I might have to.
Okay, all right, let's shout out. Before we take off, one quick question. Do you, Mathilde, do you feel like you were put on this planet at this particular time in history for a specific reason, or do you feel that your being here is random?
Wow, that was not a question I was expecting. I'm not a huge believer in fate. I am a believer that given the circumstances that we have, we can choose to seize on opportunities that are presented to us. So I don't think that I was, that there's a meaning to everything and that I was meant to be born at this time, this place, etc. But I do believe that I've made decisions throughout my life that have led me to the place that I have been, right? I decided to move to the United States. I decided on the person I was going to marry. I decided to become a mother, which not everyone decides, but I did. It was for me, it was a decision. And so I do think that given all those things, I decided to be a filmmaker, that the choices that I made led me to a specific place. And I think that it wasn't a pure accident. It wasn't completely random. It's the result of both the accidental randomness of the world and very conscious decision making that I was able to make. And I have to say that I acknowledge my privilege too, in that, which is that I was able to take a little bit of time to start this nonprofit. I was able to start a family with a partner. I'm definitely not wealthy, but I'm also not living below the poverty line. I'm living in a very nice neighborhood. I think that it's important to acknowledge, especially when you're dealing with parenthood, there's a lot that is important in terms of privilege. I don't worry about my child's safety, which is something I know a lot of mothers have to do, and it breaks my heart and it makes me want to cry. I don't, I had the luxury of being able to worry about breastfeeding because it was important to me. That's not even something that a lot of women can do. I'm able to choose childcare and find childcare that is appropriate and that is a solution that I like. I think it's important to acknowledge that there are single moms out there. There are moms of multiple children. There are moms. There's just so many different ones. And in the choices, talking about making choices, I feel very privileged to have made the choices that have led me to where I am.
For people that want to learn more about Moms in Film, want to follow you, how can they find you? What do they need to do to get involved to support your organization?
Yes, absolutely. Our website is momsinfilm.org. We are on Twitter and Instagram at momsinfilm. And we would love any support. Membership is free. You can show up to our meetups. Children are always welcome at every single event that we always have, so you don't have to pay for a sitter as well as come out. Our events are always free. You can bring your kids. You don't have to pay to show up. You can find a community of parents working in film. You can hear from a guest speaker who might be able to share some hints, some advice, some stories. And we appreciate people spreading the word. We also are fundraising. So, we are a nonprofit and any donation is fully tax deductible. So if people do feel that they're able to help us out, we are, very appreciative of any donation.
Thank you so much, Mathilde, for creating Moms in Film. Thank you so much for your time today. And thank you so much, Indiefilm Tribe, for hanging out with Mathilde and I. Until next time. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.